Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Kate Naughton. I'm the Director of Community Affairs in Mayor Joyce's office. Mayor Joyce had a school committee this evening, so she is not here tonight, but I just wanted to let you know that I am here taking notes for the mayor. There will be other opportunities to speak with Mayor Joyce about this project, and I just wanted to note them to you this evening if you would like to speak with her about it. April 14th, the mayor will be joining Councillor Diuti at 7 p.m. at the Braintree Golf Course. And on April 27th at 6 p.m. at Elder Affairs, she'll be joining Councillor Quilty. And obviously you can call the mayor's office with any questions as well. Oh, there's Councillor Diuti right there. Thank you. I was just announcing your meeting with the mayor. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kate. My name is Ted Langell. I'm Chief of Staff to the Mayor of Weymouth. We are here to give a presentation on a project that's bringing the MWRA water pipeline from the Blue Hills in Quincy to our water treatment plant in Weymouth, and much of that is through Braintree, and that's why we're here. And just so you know from the start, we're at the very beginning of this part of the phase, and so we still have another year before we need to have an agreement with the town of Braintree. We also are going to need one with the city of Quincy, because a small part of it is coming out of the Blue Hills there. So just want to point out that this is the beginning. There's going to be a lot more opportunity for these type of meetings and input along the way. We're going to give you some of those today as far as how is folks in both towns, all towns, and the city can comment on the project. This is all through state permits, so the state, when they're doing those permits, have public input as well. So there's plenty of opportunity for input along the way, and again, just the beginning of it, and construction itself is 3 years away, just to put that in some perspective. With me tonight, or this evening, I just want to introduce the Water and Sewer Superintendent from the town of Weymouth, Braden Moreau, our engineer and consultant, Ryan Allgrove, who's with Apex, and Nicole Figueredo with our communication and outreach team, Capital Strategic Solutions. And just briefly, I'm going to go over, there we are. Tonight, we're going to go have a project overview. Then we're going to go into the potential impacts to Braintree, as well as the potential benefits to Braintree, the proposed schedule, and then Nicole will come up and give you our outreach plan for everyone. And again, the purpose of this meeting is to initiate the public feedback with your community. Tonight's an opportunity to learn about the project and ask questions. And then one of the ways to also do that is for the public record to be submitting in writing to MIPA, which we can go through later. And then that open period public comment starts on March 25th and ends on April 24th. And as I mentioned, working toward a partnership with Braintree on the execution of a intermunicipal agreement with them for this pipeline that will include all the aspects of the mitigation that's needed along the way if it gets there, and then that agreement sometime in early 27, and then construction by 2029. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to start the overview of the project and some of the details for you. And then at the end, we'll have opportunity to ask questions.
Thank you, Ted. So as Ted mentioned, this project is a water supply project for the town of Weymouth and the Southfield Redevelopment Authority. And the Southfield Redevelopment Authority is the entity whose charge is to redevelop the South Weymouth Naval Air Station. So the combined projected water demand of the town of Weymouth and the South Weymouth Naval Air Station, and the Naval Air Station buys all its water from Weymouth, so sort of essentially counted as one water system. It far exceeds what Weymouth's existing supplies could ever supply. So, to the tune of over, millions of gallons a day that Weymouth does not have. And that has been a sticking point to, in the redevelopment of the base for decades. So that is the genesis of this project. So how do we get, the millions of gallons per day of water that we need? The MWRA, after evaluating many alternatives that exist, the most viable and advantageous option to make this happen is to get water from the MWRA, which is, as you probably know, it's the regional Greater Boston water supply. And, I think they've stated that they have upwards of 50 million gallons per day of available supply for people who want to be admitted. So that's our source. And, unfortunately for Weymouth, the MWRA distribution system does not extend into Weymouth. The closest that it gets is Quincy. So, working with them, determining where we could connect and how we would get from that point, point A to point B, which is somewhere in Weymouth, we've developed this project. And what it comes down to is a 6.7-mile long transmission main that starts in Quincy, as Ted mentioned, in the Blue Hills Reservation, where the MWRA has transmission mains. And so that's in Quincy. We have to go through Quincy for less than 1,000 feet into Braintree, through Braintree, into South Weymouth. So the total route is 6.7 miles, and 5.6 of that is in Braintree. So obviously a huge impact to Braintree, and we're not trying to hide that fact. But as you'll see in the map coming up, it's a matter of geography that Braintree is in between what we need and where we need to get it to. The other sort of major piece of infrastructure associated with this project that doesn't impact Braintree, but it's worth mentioning, is that we do need a pump station to boost the pressure of the water up to meet Weymouth's elevation. But that pump station is going to be constructed in Weymouth on the same site as the existing Great Pond Water Treatment Plant. So all the infrastructure in Braintree is below grade piping. There's no vertical construction or building being constructed in Braintree as part of this project. And the last thing I'll note about the overall project is that we see this as a regional impact. A lot of the towns on the South Shore, or a lot, if not all, have water supply issues where they're running up against their Water Management Act permits, sensitive ecological areas where the Mass DEP makes it very difficult for them to extract any more water out of their groundwater wells or from their surface water supplies. So bringing in an MWRA pipeline anywhere in the region, just by way of having a plan B or a redundancy, it impacts the entire region. And I include Braintree in that because, as you probably know, Braintree's just about finished building a giant water treatment plant, but bringing the MWRA water through, it offers a way to have redundancy to that plant. And I think this is the only way you would ever get redundancy to the level of a water system as big as Braintree's. So it does have regional impact, and that extends south of Weymouth as well. So this is the map, and like I said, it is mostly through Braintree, so it's generally a straight line from the connection point in the Blue Hills, and it extends on Granite Street, under 93 to Five Corners, then crossing Five Corners to Franklin Street, and then Franklin Street turns into Washington, crosses Hancock, where the MBTA Railroad is, and the Manattaquit River, and then it turns onto Plain Street and Grove Street to the Weymouth town line. So, the northern half is essentially Route 37, and the pipeline, as I'm showing here, that you can see, there's another mile or so after it gets to the Weymouth town line, getting to the pump station at Great Pond in Weymouth. and it's a 36-inch transmission main, so it is a large diameter pipe. So I'll talk a little bit about the impacts. Obviously, this type of construction, I think most people can sort of visualize what it looks like to put a pipe down the street. These utility projects, installing water mains or gas mains, these types of projects are happening in Braintree every year. And I'm sure we all have felt the pain of waiting for the detail officers to let us through, or is being sent on a detour around a construction crew. So I think in a lot of ways, the impacts that will be felt are sort of a known quantity. So things like the construction equipment, obviously noisy. If you're living on the construction route, you might feel vibrations as they're digging the trench. When you have diesel vehicles, there can be air quality issues. Construction kicks up dust, things like that. Probably the two biggest things are parking and traffic. As you can imagine, this project alignment is a major traveled route. It's a commuter route, so there are going to be impacts. And one thing I'll say about that is the entire project route in Braintree is on Mass DOT state-controlled roads. So they obviously are going to have a huge piece of the, they're going to have many requirements that we're going to have to adhere to. And in our preliminary conversations with them so far, they have indicated that they are expecting the majority of this work in Braintree to occur at night. So that solves a traffic issue, but obviously construction next to residential areas at night is not ideal. And the leadership in Braintree has brought that up from the council and the mayor's office, and we realize that is a potential issue, and it's going to take time to work with Mass DOT and the leadership in Braintree to determine when construction will occur and through what sections of the alignment. So I don't want to say that we know exactly this whole thing's going to be at night or it's going to be all during the day. Those are details that we have to work out. But I do expect that certainly sections of this would happen at night. And during those time periods at night, they'll, depending on where the trench is located, which we're still working those details out. We're in the very early stages of design, whether or not we can do alternating traffic to get cars around the construction zone, or whether we have to do a temporary detour. Those are the types of details that we're still working out, and that we would obviously divulge that information to people along the route and the public, as they become known. So just keeping going with this theme of impacts. So like I said, it's a utility project similar to what is performed in all municipalities every construction season. It's a moving work zone, so we anticipate that this pipe crew would be able to get in 60 feet per day of pipe. So you just do the math, 5.6 miles, you're talking about approximately a 2-year construction duration. And again, there's not going to be one neighborhood or block that would get 2 years of construction. It's 60 feet a day, starting at one end and working towards the other, for lack of a better description. So, any one block or neighborhood may have impacts for, on the order of months, not years, certainly. There are a couple of crossings that will take a little bit longer, that won't be 60 feet per day. I mentioned we have to go under I-93. There's also a large culvert that's parallel to I-93. That's the outlet from the old Quincy Reservoir. So we have to cross that trenchlessly, which means we have to dig 2 large pits on either side and do a trenchless installation of the pipe underneath the culvert. That takes a little longer, on the order of, say, 3 months. And in a similar fashion, at the intersection of Hancock and Plain Street, we need to get underneath the river and the railroad simultaneously. So you can imagine that will take a little bit longer than a few weeks. But the preliminary plan is to, in sort of the same way, build 2 pits on either side. Then you go down and you tunnel underneath those obstacles, come up on the other side. So there's a period of construction just to build the pits. That will be on the order of a few months. So those are the 2 sort of most difficult construction locations along this alignment. The rest of the alignment would essentially be, like I said, open trench, 60 feet per day, give or take. And this picture here, you'll see, I sort of split it up just to give you an idea of, if you split the project into thirds, so that orange line, which is from the Quincy line to Five Corners, that's approximately 7 months at 60 feet per day. From there to Hancock Street, call that six months, and then from there to the Weymouth Town line is another 8 months. So this sort of just to give you a visual of how long it takes to get in these sort of big chunks of the project. And one other thing that we haven't determined yet is construction phasing. So obviously we could put 5 construction crews out there and this project would be done in 6 months. That's not our intention. Our intention is to make this manageable. So whether or not, you could have a construction crew near the Quincy Town line and one at the Weymouth Town line and sort of work towards the middle to try to expedite the project, that remains to be seen. Those are the things we have to figure out. But just to give you a sense of how long this project would take to complete. Okay. Enough on impacts. So, as Ted mentioned, what we're trying to do here is partner with the town of Braintree because there have been some significant benefits identified along this corridor that could be incorporated into this project. So, as part of an intermunicipal agreement, we've identified roadway and traffic control improvements, which I'll get a little more specific in the next slide. But essentially, there's been a lot of studies done on this corridor, especially it being a state road, and a lot of improvements identified to improve safety. So at certain intersections, certain stretches of the road, sidewalks, pedestrian, bike lanes, turning lanes, stuff like that. These are things that have been identified as issues, but to this point, there is no plan by the state or any other agency to design and construct these. So there's sort of known quantities, but just nothing's moved forward. So we see those as obvious opportunities. Another opportunity is the town of Braintree's water infrastructure. So we've identified that along this 5.6 mile route, 2.9 miles of that are cast iron water mains in the Braintree water system. So that's old infrastructure, probably turn of the century, low reliability, lots of breaks, potentially lead service lines coming off those cast iron water mains going to people's houses. So, and when you have a large infrastructure installation like this, we anticipate that there's going to be other utilities that need to be replaced to accommodate our pipe. That's a fact of life in this type of construction. So, we see that as an opportunity that if Braintree has infrastructure that needs to be replaced, and I can tell you that probably the reason that there's so much cast iron in this stretch is because replacing pipes on state roads is expensive, and call it twice as expensive as replacing it on a local road, and that's just because paving on state roads is more expensive, and because it's a state road, it's got more traffic, and it's just a more expensive project. So this is an opportunity to replace some of those cast iron water mains. We expect that we're going to have to replace utilities anyways, so it makes sense that those utilities would be Braintree pipes. And, that's a big opportunity. The other item on here I listed is water supply redundancy. I mentioned that this, we see this as a regional project, and it's a no-brainer to everybody involved that you would accommodate an emergency connection between the MWRA and Braintree as part of this project. And, you know, this isn't to say that Braintree would start buying MWRA water. This would be a purely emergency scenario type transfer of water. But again, the opportunity to get MWRA water as a redundant source is sort of the only way that the town of Braintree could have full redundancy. You know, I think the town of Braintree, the average day demand is somewhere between like 4 and 5 million gallons per day. You know, that kind of volume is not coming from any of the neighbors. You know, Weymouth is looking for more water. All of Braintree's neighbors need water. They don't have 4 million gallons a day to just hand over to Braintree, even in an emergency. So this is an opportunity to have that 100% redundancy for the town of Braintree. This figure here shows some of those traffic improvements that have been identified by previous studies. So as you can see, the stretch of Franklin Street between Five Corners and Washington, sidewalk improvements and pedestrian crossing improvements have been identified there. The intersection of Hancock Street and Washington Street, the intersection of Liberty Street and Grove Street, opportunities there to make safety improvements. The John Mahar Highway and Pearl Street intersection, even though that's not on the project route, I think, you know, the DPW in Braintree has identified that that intersection will see increased traffic as a result of the construction, and that intersection has been on their hit list, I think, for a long time for improvements. I think it's kind of a well-known commodity. So this would be an opportunity to make those improvements potentially. And then the other one I have on here is roadway and sidewalk improvements along Plain Street and Grove Street between Hancock and Liberty. And those projects they've been identified at kind of a high level through planning studies. So exactly, you know, where a turn lane would go or where a bike lane would go, those things need to be determined. The issue has been identified, I think, pretty clearly, but the exact solution still needs to be worked out. And that's, like I said, they've been identified in planning documents, but they kind of died there. So this is an opportunity to take those steps, figure out exactly what needs to be done, design them, construct them. And I just listed here some of the suggestions that those planning studies have made at these intersections in these stretches. Pedestrian timers, signal improvements, curb ramps, lighting improvements, bicycle accommodations, turning lanes, grass buffers, traffic signal controls, all the things that you can do to make these areas safer for motorists and pedestrians. Okay, so big picture, where we are in this project. We just, as Ted mentioned, we submitted to the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act last week. It's going to be posted on Wednesday, 2 days from now, and that opens up the public comment period. The document that we submitted is a draft environmental impact report, so we get the comments back on the draft. Comments that are submitted, we have to respond to them, and we submit a final environmental impact report, including responses to all the public comments we get. And we're hoping to get through that, and by the end of this year, and that will allow the Water Resources Commission to vote on giving us an interbasin transfer approval, which is just sort of another way of saying that they have to approve us taking water from the Quabbin Reservoir and using it in Weymouth, which is obviously in a different river basin. So that whole permit process is what we're in right now. We're in the preliminary stages of design, so obviously in order to get an intermunicipal agreement with Braintree and Quincy developed, we have to develop the design to a certain level so that everybody understands what the impacts are going to be. So we're doing that right now. We're out there doing survey, and we're trying to figure out, get some detail on how this pipeline would be constructed, what the impacts would be. And the hope is we can move that process along, figure out the mitigation in Braintree, some of these opportunities, like I said, for improvements, what those exactly look like, and have an intermunicipal agreement signed. And once those intermunicipal agreements are signed with Braintree and Quincy, the MWRA can vote to admit Weymouth and the Southfield Redevelopment Authority. And then, we can go to construction, which we're anticipating wouldn't start until 2029. And like I said, extending through, say, 2031. And I put also here the mitigation construction. So a lot of these projects that we showed, sidewalks, and some of them wouldn't happen until after, we're not going to fix the roads until after we come through with the pipeline. Some of the mitigation would happen during construction. So if we're replacing cast iron water mains, that would happen while we're going down the street. So, when the improvements in Braintree happen, sort of covers a wide span of time depending on what the mitigation and the improvement is. Some of it could even happen before if we're worried about the traffic at an intersection during construction and we need to do something about that, then that has to happen before the construction starts. So you could see some of that mitigation before construction even begins. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole now. So this is not the last time you'll see this project team. Nicole's going to give you some information on expectations moving forward as to how we're going to reach out and how you can continue to provide feedback.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm Nicole Figueredo. I'm with Capital Strategic Solutions, and we were brought on to assist with the communications on this project. The town of Weymouth currently has a MWRA, or Weymouth MWRA water website. There's also an email address for you to submit any comments or questions that you may have. We're going to use a layered approach to reach the largest amount of people here that are going to be impacted by this project. We're going to reach out via email. We're going to post things in the newspaper. We're going to reach out to your administrations and get time on your boards and committees. And we want this to be a two-way communications process where you would email us questions, you could reach out to us, and we can talk to you. We're even going to use boots on the ground door hangers just so that we can get in touch with you and you know how to get in touch with us, because construction and a project like this does have an impact on your quality of life. We're going to communicate across all the channels using social media as well as regular print media. We're going to increase that frequency as soon as the project gets through the MEPA and design process and goes into construction. We're going to use something called a weekly anticipated construction schedule. So down the road, you will have an idea of what's going to happen ahead of time and if there are any scheduled impacts to keep you up to date and ahead of things that are happening. We're also going to use the e-subscriber list to let you know of other opportunities that you can share information with us as we continue down this road, whether it's a public forum, a community event, or an event like here tonight. And I want to thank you all for coming out. It's a miserable Monday evening, and it's dinner time. There are snacks and water in the back of the room. Please take some, because I don't want to take it home with me. But some of the things that we will email you about or get in touch with you about are, these types of events, the progress of the work, opportunities to share feedback, as well as, even if you just had a simple question or comment you wanted to share with the team. So there's an email already set up, there's a website already set up, and we're looking to hear back from you. With that, I'm going to kick it back over to Ryan.
No, you're good. And now we're ready to take your questions. If you do have a question, just come up over to the podium speak into it, and we'll do our best to answer.
Good evening. My name is Pat Mulcairn. I live at 12 Ellery Street. I have a handful of questions. You mind if I ask them and then just sit back down?
Yeah.
All right. So there are a bunch of things in town that I think the MWRA should at least look at if they're not looking at, and I'm wondering if they are looking at or if they'd be willing to. A few of the things would be relocating all utilities out of River Street at Plain Street as part of the project. The water pipe and the sewer pipe, monitor and fix the sewer leaks on impacted road sections, inflow and infiltration, only Franklin, Granite, Grove, Washington, Plain Street. And the project should mitigate by helping fund culvert replacements at Pond Street, Sunset Beam, Liberty Street, and Old Liberty Street, Cranberry Brook. I don't know, just something that pops in my head. There's a sewer overflow spot over on Allen Street, and it just dumps into the river, and it kills me. So I hear MWRA, I want to bring it up. And I'm not going to lie, I'm having a tough time supporting a pipeline project through Braintree for Weymouth when it wasn't long ago that the Weymouth administration publicly opposed a project that was going to bring good jobs to Braintree at Banner Park. That one still stings. We had an agreement that they were going to hire from the community and everything, and that all went to the wayside. They went running scared when they heard Weymouth complaining. And lastly, this pipeline is going to come through our town and disrupt our lives every day, and it's going to a development that, in my opinion, I don't think I got to watch what I say. I'd like to see more work with the community out of the developer. I don't think that it's going to bring the good jobs that people think it'll bring. And if it's going to disrupt our everyday life, I think that there should at least be conversations with the developer about building the airbase under a project labor agreement along with this project. Thank you.
And I mean, when we talk about, MWRA's involvement, this is a Weymouth project. It's not an MWRA project currently. So the MWRA mitigation would be separate from what we would be doing, for Braintree, mitigating this specific, pipeline going through Braintree. And I'm not going to argue, but I have a slightly different recollection of the Banner Park. I think just like Braintree is now, we were looking for certain mitigation. Mostly, the biggest one I remember is traffic along Columbian Street, and for us, West Street, and up, Grove and down again Columbian and that way. And not sure what happened, from there, but I know that's what we were looking for, were some serious traffic studies and mitigation for that project. I know the project now that's up there, we do support. That's going up there now. We've met with the the town and the developers on that project, and support it. Yeah, my recollection is that didn't come from Weymouth directly. Again, thanks.
Yeah, hi. I'm Rick DePaulo. I live at 311 Union Street in Braintree. And I'll start off by saying this. I'm glad that you've got a nice group and you're trying hard to do what you feel is right for your town. And you're approaching it in a way that we can talk without being loud at one another or anything like that. But I've watched, as this approached the town, I watched it from the Weymouth side. And I watched it on the YouTube channel for the Weymouth meetings that you had. And it went from a 30-inch pipe, I believe, was it a 30-inch pipe a couple of years ago, and now you've increased it to a 36? Is that right?
I think, the discussions you're talking about back in 2024, which is the last time we had a public meeting in Weymouth, I think the 30-inch pipe and a 36-inch pipe were both on the table, and over
it was
the last,
a 30-inch pipe. I watched the meeting again last night. And then, anyways, it's not big enough. That's a small pipe. Here's the thing I'm worried about. I'm worried about that you're going to start your pipe in Weymouth and then transverse the roads into Braintree, then down Granite. And then when you hit Five Corners, you're going to find out you can't go past that because we already have an MWRA water main coming down from the Blue Hills on Granite, and it's at Five Corners, and it's traveling down toward the reservoir. And that area of roadway is so packed in there and thick with pipes, you won't be able to get through. So what you'll say is, I'll just attach my 30-inch pipe to the pre-existing 48-inch pipe that the town already has that installed in 1995, was inspected, and was said to be a beautiful pipe. And that'll cut our town's emergency MWRA pipeline from 48 inches down to, well, if it's 48 inches, you took 30 inches of it, there'd only be about 18 inches left for us to use. I'd rather see you start your pipe, if you're going to start the pipe, right at Quincy and go this way, so you'll immediately realize we have a pipe there, and I don't think you can get past it, and there's all rock and ledge up in there. That's what we were told before. It was very hard for us to dig down. I don't think you, all honesty, I don't think you should come through Braintree at all. And there is an alternate route for this thing. It's being over and over spoken like there's no alternate route. There's an alternate route through Quincy. The MWRA, Mass Water Resources, is a water resources authority, and as such, it has Massachusetts Water Resources Authority powers under statute. It has the power of eminent domain. Quincy is an MWRA community. Weymouth will become an MWRA community. Braintree is not. They have no power of eminent domain in Braintree. They only have power of eminent domain along their pipeline through and in areas of Quincy and now in Weymouth. So if you came from the Blue Hills through Quincy to Weymouth, you had to make a left and a right or a street over there. They can do something to curve that area, and they could just take it. They can't do anything in Braintree. They're powerless. But if we allow you as a town to connect your Weymouth line through the roads of Braintree, they will have eminent domain power, blasting power, and all the powers associated with the Water Resource Authority do whatever they can do to, one, safeguard that pipe as it gets bigger over years, to go through other streets in Braintree than the ones that we're proposing tonight. They will have power in Braintree that they don't have. One of the things that I was disappointed in is when I saw the Weymouth meeting last night, and I noticed there was 3 more Weymouth meetings from earlier years. They were coming up on my YouTube, was the earlier years that they were watching one of the other. Never was it discussed of what would happen if you actually connected that pipe to the MWRA for the Weymouth residents. They weren't happy with the pipe at all. They felt that the pipe was, because of the mass amount of building taking place from the MBTA zoning act, that they wouldn't need it at all. But they were never told that if they ever tapped into MWRA water, we have an emergency connection that's 48 inches. We were told right off the bat, we'll never turn it on. And this was when we had the old style of farm government town meeting, and I remembered it, and I voted on it and stuff. If we ever turn that connection on just once, we would allow fluoridated water. The MWRA water is, to me, it's a polluted water. It's disgusting water. It's fluoridated. We would allow fluoridated water into the reservoir. And once that happened, just on one occasion, the laws were structured back in 1995 that if you tapped into MWRA, you got fluoridated water in your system, your town now has to fluoridate its water from now on for eternity. And it's a very expensive thing. And if you put that into your pipes in Weymouth, the MWRA is going to tell you to take your current water resource sources in Weymouth that the town has, like lakes and ponds, and offline them. They can't use them. So they're going to be, all the water for Weymouth will have to go through that, well, it was a 30-inch pipe to a 36-inch pipe. It's all got to go through that one pipe for Weymouth. The pipe's not big enough for Weymouth. And once Weymouth puts that pipe in over to Weymouth, the next feared concern I would have is that all the towns south of Weymouth, Hingham, Situate, Cohasset, Marshfield, Duxbury, Plymouth, all of them would now be forced to connect to that pipe, to connect to, they're all screaming they want MWRA water because there's too much building going on, and they have no connection. The only connection, everyone's saying, is through Little Braintree. And Little Braintree could hold out and get an awful lot out of this for apples and a cherry sheet if it wanted to, but it's not really doing that. But I don't want it in Braintree at all. And originally, these pipelines, when they came about, there was an alternate route, and it stayed in Quincy the whole way. But it wasn't a number one alternate route because it would cost a little more. But my concern, again, is you might start this pipe in Weymouth, transverse the roads, go to 5 corners, and find out right there, you say, oh, forget it, we don't need to go up anymore, we'll just hop on the pipe that's wicked expensive, that the town of Braintree paid for all by itself to put in, to bring MWRA water down to its reservoir or to the pump house. In 1995, you go to the 1995 annual report, go to page 170, and you'll see it right up there that the pipe was completed, and it can go to, it's meant to go to either one. They can switch it. They can have it, if there's like a lot of rain and it's going to flood up there in the Blue Hills and they're afraid of the water escaping up there, they can open up a relief valve and bring all the water down into Braintree and throw it into the reservoir as a lake. Or if it's drying up the lake from a drought, they could throw it into the lake, or they have a switch where they can throw it into the pump house direct. But to me, again, that's a 48-inch line that was put in back in 1995 when we did not have MBTA zoning. And Braintree paid for the whole thing. Randolph and Holbrook, Braintree, and now Weymouth will be off of it. And then all the towns south of Weymouth. And we won't have any water for ourselves for an emergency. I'd rather have your community put in its own pipe all the way up, go to the Blue Hills and come down through Quincy and then go into Weymouth and stay totally out of Braintree. But that's me. I'm only speaking for myself. And the other concerns I have is when we did Union Street in Braintree, it was a huge pipe. It's a 32 to a 36-inch pipe. So I imagine it's matching whatever you have in Weymouth Landing now, which you said was 36. So it's probably that big. But when they came down Union Street, that road was ripped up, and it took forever, and people's cars were getting ruined on it. And then they had people from all over the town were having pipe work and road work done. Mr. Quirk, who owns the car dealership out on Quincy Avenue, had all his cars out there, and when they did the road work, the dust went over all those cars. And it was the town of Braintree that had to pay to wash every single car in that 2,000 or 3,000 car parking lot that he had. So, and then there was businesses that complained that their businesses were going to go out of business because you couldn't park on the street with the street ripped up. And that the construction work went off for almost 2 years. I think Campanelli's was having trouble, and there's a few other ones. So it can be decimating, especially if you hit a problem, like a big rock or something, it can be even longer. And then I don't know about the money side of this. Before, there was plenty of money when we did these things. We had grants, we had state grants, federal grants. The federal money is all cut off because of what we're seeing on TV. We have no federal money for the state. So I'm assuming that you're proposing, from what I heard, to do this with Weymouth taxpayer money. And that's an awful long pipe at 6 miles. It's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't think your taxpayers have the money for it, which means that could be a very long time and slow down transmission, getting the pipe done for financial reasons. And there's obviously, where you're a town, it's not like a regular contractor was doing the thing. If we had a contractor doing something in Braintree, we'd have something where if he doesn't do it in a certain amount of time, we'd give him a fine in the contract. There's a whip that moves the horse as well as a carrot that moves the horse. And the contractor could have been, if you get things done ahead of time, you get more money, and you get less if you take longer. But the whole thing is, if you're doing it as a town, I don't think we have any type of thing that we can do to the horse to get him to giddy up any. And I don't know, I don't really like the whole idea of everything. Doing a big construction project in a time when the money's so scarce all over the country, and everything's so inflationary, going way, way up in cost within months, it's not a good time to be doing this at all. But and then now, if we had a rupture, there's nothing, I didn't see anything on any of the maps I saw that you put up on YouTube or here tonight that speak anything about where the shutoffs are for this pipe. So if you have a shutoff and it's way up at the start of the pipe, up in the top of the Blue Hills, The Braintree Water Department in the middle of the night on a holiday does not have enough staff to drive all the way up there to turn the shut-off valve off. And I don't think the Weymouth one does. And if we just had a rupture just right now, we just saw all water all over the street out the window here, we don't know if that's our pipe or your pipe. We don't even know if it's a pipe at all. But we will call the water department that's local, and they will start digging. And if there's a pipe in the way of shutting that pipe off that's broken, it's going to be like what we just saw on television no more than 2 or 3 weeks ago out in Boston and Dorchester, where they had a massive main break, and people can die from those main breaks. Those transmission lines, they can die. It floods, it's big, it's huge, it's strong current. They took a long time, it was saying on the news, to shut it off because they couldn't figure out how to shut it off. It's not a shut off that you get in your car and you look around the front of your house for, and you can see there's a water shut off there. There could be one shut off for that great big mile-long pipe. And it could be a real drive to find it, get to it. Is it in the snow? Did anyone put one of those things like they put on top of the fire hydrant in the wintertime, like a flag over it? I doubt it. And those shut-offs are expensive. I don't know, you haven't mentioned how many shut-offs will be in Braintree and where they'll be and how they'll be identified and who will shut them off, because there's a hospital in Weymouth. Imagine, there's a very big hospital. It's our hospital too, even though it's in your town. It serves us, and we care about the hospital. And I would be extremely hesitant to want to shut off a main that serves an entire community and shut off a hospital unless I had a lot of things standing behind me, a lot of reasons why I should be doing that. It means that main will be going for a while before someone makes a decision to shut it off. And there'll still be no water at the hospital. And I don't, Dr. Alexander Graham Bell, he had a famous saying that neither the Army nor the Navy will be able to protect us from an aerial assault. Now, in his day, there was no Air Force, and he was trying to get an Air Force going. He liked the airplanes. He was big on airplanes, too. But the quote really meant by saying the Army nor the Navy can protect us from an aerial assault. He had ordered Theodore Vail, the head of AT&T, his president there, to diversify his network because he was worried about World War I and II and Hitler and all that stuff. He was worried about it. He saw what was going on overseas. I think it was World War I. Meaning that we took the trunk cables for our telephone plants and we buried them underground. We buried everything to protect them from an assault. And they're underground even today to protect them in the wintertime. The trunk cables connect the telephone calls from building to building in the phone company. And the lines are what you see on the street. Those are individual. They go to the lines, they go to the houses. But the trunk cables interconnect them. Relative to what we're doing here, that quote that he had, that neither the Army or the Navy can protect us from an aerial assault, also applies to all utility companies. What you're doing is you're saying that your entire town right now is going to be on one pipe, and that's it. And it's going to be one pipe through Braintree to the MDC. There should be more than one pipe. What if you have to shut that pipe off? You're going to be shutting off the whole town of Weymouth. You should be able to flip another switch on another, but you should be diversified. You should have the backup system. You should have another way to get the water in. Thank you.
We appreciate that. Just on that end, we will have two sources, our own Great Pond and as well as MWRA water, so there will be redundancy on that end too. Anyone else have any comments or questions?
Hi, I'm Grant Whitney. I actually live in Union Point now. So I just had two questions. Was on the, I guess, could you let us know about the construction on the water main from Great Pond into the upcoming project, and would that happen like concurrently or only once that this main is finished? And then question two is just because I know the redevelopment project, it's primarily Weymouth. I know Abington and Rockland have little chunks there. Is there like a long-term potential in the future for Abington and Rockland to later on become MWRA towns or potentially have, I guess, what Weymouth would have, which was, some from MWRA and some from their own source. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think you're asking if there's another sort of project from the end of this pipeline to the base, and there isn't. The infrastructure that's there in place now is sufficient. The problem is volume kind of on an annual and a maximum day basis. So the pipes in Weymouth are big enough to get it from where our pump station is going to the base. And then the second part of your question, I'm drawing a blank. Oh, Abington and Rockland, excuse me. Yeah, so this project brings water to the Abington and Rockland portions of the base within the Southfield Redevelopment Authority's jurisdiction. The rest of Abington and Rockland would have to pursue MWRA supply outside of this separately. And, there is a group of South Shore communities, including Abington and Rockland, Hanover, Hingham, who are doing just that. They're sort of weighing their options as they see that if this pipe gets brought to Weymouth, that gets it a lot closer to their communities, and they have some of the same issues that Weymouth faces. So, they're, say, 2 steps behind where Weymouth is right now, but they are certainly exploring it.
Hello, thank you. Robert Kearns. I had a couple questions and some comments. The question was the interbasin transfer. Where is that information? When are the comments due? Who are the comments to? How can people comment? I haven't seen it on the website.
Yeah, so all the information on the interbasin transfer is included in our draft environmental impact report, which you haven't seen it. It hasn't been posted yet. So the MWRA Environmental Monitor, which is their publication, they publish twice a month, and they're publishing on Wednesday, which will include this submittal. And then, and if you go on the town's MWRA website, it'll have all the links and everything you need to get to the MWRA Environmental Monitor page. There'll be half a dozen projects that get posted on Wednesday. This one, you click on it, and then you submit your comments electronically, straight to MWRA.
So is the interbasin transfer part of the MWRA comments? Or
Yes.
is that I thought that was a different regulatory.
It's all inclusive. So this MWRA submission is the pipeline, the interbasin transfer. It's the whole shooting match.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I had, I guess I don't know who this is for, but does an emergency connection already exist for Braintree to MWA or not? Do we know or not?
My understanding is that there is a way to get MWRA water into Braintree Great Pond, not to be confused with Weymouth Great Pond. But that is not the same thing as what we're talking about, an emergency connection where you would have a trailered pump and a suction point and a discharge point that you would, in a matter of a couple of hours, be able to hook it up and pump water into Braintree, fill up Braintree's tanks with potable water. So I think it's a couple of steps above what currently exists. Where I don't want to pretend like I know everything about that interconnection, but my understanding is that, because the MWRA water is chloraminated and fluoridated, that Mass DEP doesn't want that water going into Great Pond.
Okay, so there is a pipe that goes to Great Pond, but there's some concern about putting the water in Great Pond, Braintree, just to be clear.
Right. And the type of redundancy that the connection we're talking about gives you is, say God forbid that the treatment plant burns to the ground in Braintree. Having a pipe that dumps into the pond is not going to do you any good because you have no treatment plant. But this type of connection, you would be able to have a direct connection to the MWRA supply, and like I said, in a couple of hours, the town would have water.
So what do you know where you would connect that to the distribution center, to the
So
to the
no, we have
tanks?
not determined where,
Okay.
what location that makes, hydraulically where that makes sense. So that's part of, what we'll figure out over the next, weeks and months.
Okay, thank you. And like I was saying, I have a couple comments, and I appreciate your time here tonight, and appreciate the regional importance of this project. but Braintree is bearing a significant share of the construction impacts without receiving the direct water supply benefits, although I think an emergency connection would be important, although I think finding the details on the current one would be good too. I agree with previous speaker talking about a labor union agreement for local jobs. And additionally, the plan for Plain Street for the micro tunnel under the Manatequit River in the railroad tracks is a great opportunity for improved long-term river health by relocating some of the utilities, water, sewer, wire conduit that are currently on the river channel. I got pictures I'll leave for you all. Having that micro tunnel large enough so that the town or whoever has these utilities could relocate them into that, I think would be a great benefit if you're already building something underneath the river. Additionally, this project will have impact several roads and major roads in Braintree, and I think it'd be wise to do some pre and post construction inspection of sewer infrastructure, along with repairs, if any, impacts from vibrations or other things from construction. I think that would be good. Like previous speaker said, there is a sewer overflow that does impact Weymouth residents as well in the landing. That would be great. Additionally, there's some existing concerns over by Cranberry Brook of sewer infrastructure that is vulnerable on Route 37. And if there's possible, look into evaluating addressing this as part of the project. I know it's not in the specific area of the project, but as mitigation, and also would like to see some mitigation funds to improve fish passage through upstream culverts at Pond Street, at Sunset Stream, Liberty, and Old Liberty Streets at Cranberry Brook. And I'm going to send some written comments too for MIPA, but it'd be great to, in the final EIR, to clearly define how Braintree can access the emergency supplies of water and how it compares to the current connections. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jim Smith. I'm a resident of Braintree. I just have two quick questions. I'm under the assumption that this project is built and only to bring water to Weymouth. Is that correct?
Currently, it's being built big enough where it can go beyond, the pipeline can go beyond Weymouth, and MWRA has capacity beyond what Weymouth needs to flow through that pipe.
Okay. Who's paying for this?
We're still, well, first we have to figure out how much it's going to cost through this process. That's still under discussion between the town, the state, and the developers.
Any idea of a rough idea of budget, what this is going to cost? Any idea? Just a rough?
We think it's possibly around 120 million, between 90 and 120 million maybe.
Okay, so that could be, the town of Weymouth could be paying for some of that, the MWRA could be paying for some of that, and the
State and
the
yeah.
developer at South?
Yep.
Okay.
Any of those combinations.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Nick Campia, Braintree resident. I just had a quick question about the Manatequit River crossing. Are your groups aware of the restoration work that the town has been doing in that area, specifically at Hancock and Plain Street? And are you sensitive to how much work we've put into that specific stretch of the Manatequit River?
Yeah, we're certainly aware of it, and our goal is not to disrupt the work that's been done with the dam removal and all that. So yeah, we're certainly aware of it, and we know that there's a large development on that parcel that's going through its approval process right now as well. So yeah, we're aware of that. There's a lot of coordination that needs to happen around that intersection.
All right.
Yeah.
That was my follow-up also. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Good evening. I'm a resident of Braintree. My name is Kathleen Donovan. I have a question. You say potential benefits to Braintree, and that would be replacement of our aging water infrastructure. Is that a guarantee? You want to, while you're putting in your pipe, you want to replace our pipes? Or is that, we're digging, that pipe doesn't look good, we'll replace that section? Are you planning on replacing the whole section?
I think those are the kind of details that we need to work out. You know, we've identified it as an opportunity, you know, but exactly what the mitigation is, you know, that's what we need to figure out over the next year. And that's what we're working towards. And this is really the first step. Getting all this feedback about what's important to people, you know, that's important, and it lets us go back to the leadership in Braintree and figure out what makes sense to give Braintree as mitigation for the disruption of the construction. So I don't know, you know, if it's this stretch of pipe or that stretch of pipe, or exactly how many miles we would replace, but you know, we've identified that as something that makes sense given what we're trying to do, and you know, I think we'll certainly pursue what makes sense.
And then also, Braintree is a cut-through town, so when you're talking about, there'll be direct impact to the homes along that route, but we'll also have direct impact where other towns not only they come right through here to get to the highway, so that would be something that you really should consider.
Yeah, we actually did a traffic study of the corridor as part of kind of our due diligence before we approached Braintree about this project. And so, yeah, we certainly have an understanding of, you know, the impacts that construction could have on this corridor. They're significant.
It seems like very big that this could extend to other towns too. Like, is this the start of passing water through to all the other towns?
Yeah, to put it in, I guess, in terms of numbers, the MWRA has 7.5 million gallons per day at the connection point that we're connecting to. Weymouth is now asking for 5.5 million gallons per day. So at the start, or it's, you know, when this pipeline is done, there'll be 2 million gallons a day of capacity available. And down the road, if the MWRA makes improvements to their system, which they're, you know, have not indicated they're going to do, you know, they would have to spend tens of millions of dollars to do this, but that capacity could go from 7.5 to upwards of, you know, 12 to 15 million gallons per day. So there's some additional capacity accommodated in this pipeline, you know, not an outrageous amount. You know, you also, when you design these pipelines, too big can be a problem because it takes the water too long to get from point A to point B, and the water can get stagnant, the water quality can degrade. So, you know, we're balancing that. We're performing that balancing act of providing additional capacity for the future, but not so much that it affects the water quality, you know, for the short term.
And is there a study that would show from Blue Hills to Weymouth you wouldn't need a pumping station through Braintree as well?
Yeah, as part of our environmental impact report that becomes publicly, you know, viewable on Wednesday, we have to describe all the infrastructure that's required to make this project work. And, you know, we show that you do need a pump station somewhere, and, you know, we located it in Weymouth, you know, for a lot of reasons. But, you know, obviously we realize that putting a pump station in Braintree would not be an ideal situation. So there's a spot in Weymouth at an existing town-owned site, and that's what we're using.
But wouldn't that be like more than 3/4 of the way to where you want it to go? I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of pressure. If you've got it coming from the Blue Hills, that's a long way before it gets to your Weymouth pump station. Wouldn't there be a chance that there would be something needed in Braintree? No?
No, I mean, I guess one way to think about it is that section of pipe, there's no customers on that pipe. So the pressure requirements aren't as, you know, restrictive as they are on the discharge side of the pump station, where all the customers are. So it's really, you know, it's a transmission main. You know, it's just trying to get to, really all we're trying to do is get water to the Weymouth town line. That's really it.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Steve Phipps. I live on Main Street right next to Central Hospital. Quick question. There was mention of the $120 million estimate. When there was the meeting in Tufts Library with Mayor Headland, he made mention of a bonding initiative for 90 to 120 million if the stars align, which was his quote. What happened to that initiative?
I'm sorry, which initiative?
It was a bonding initiative. He's going to go talk to folks up in the state about it. And that was what was put forward to the people of Weymouth.
Yeah, that's,
so what was the end result with that?
that hasn't resulted yet. They're still discussing that at the state level. The state has already invested $35 million through a grant for design and some construction of the infrastructure needed on the base for the new water. And then whenever you talk water, there's the sewer aspect of that on the other side. So the state's already invested $35 million on that aspect of it. So my thinking is the state's not going to invest $35 million and then let the project not happen. So they're still working out the details to that, but there's definitely still state involvement in that solution.
Okay. All right. By putting in this pipe, let's exclude Braintree for a second. All right. What capacity of number of units in addition will be able to be supplied with this 36-inch pipe coming into Weymouth? Do you have a forecast for that?
Well, the project calls for up to 6,000 housing units and 2 million square feet of commercial space.
Okay. So in the Southfield Redevelopment Authority's master plan for 2023, they make an indication how they're going to go ahead and anticipate, and they've identified areas at Union Point to build another 4,000 units. And where some might be commercial, but if the market criteria doesn't adhere to having commercial, they'll make those residential. And I know there's other building going on in Weymouth as well that's being constructed over the other side of Weymouth. Do we now put this pipe in? Is that capacity that you speak of to already used up by what's on the plans, or how much further is there that you have beyond that 6,000 units?
Yeah, so the interbasin transfer request, or how much we're asking for the MWRA, it's all based on projections out to build out conditions for Weymouth and the base. Okay. So they are conservative numbers. The idea with an interbasin transfer request is that this is the most you could ever need. And it's based on a maximum day basis. So what's the most water you could ever need on a 24-hour period? And, you know, we had to do those projections and submit them to the Water Resources Commission, and they've been reviewed, and we anticipate they'll be approved as part of our submittal. But, you know, so a lot of thought went into the amount of water we're asking for. And that information is kind of laid out in excruciating detail in the document that we just submitted.
Okay, all right. Am I correct in assuming that there is no representation of Braintree Water here tonight? You are correct. Okay. I find that highly short-sighted because I would like to know what they think the risks are to tying up to, even for emergency purpose, to a high-pressured MWRA system. You know, I know Weymouth has had to do some remediation to some of their infrastructure because there was a question about leakage in the water system. So I'm wondering what Braintree's view on all this is about. And it would have been nice if they were here so we can get some input from them about this. Because obviously the residents of Braintree are very concerned with this length of pipe coming through their town, and if there's going to be benefits to hook up to it, can their infrastructure handle it? So I think that's something that should really be addressed, and it should be addressed by Braintree's water.
I can assure you they're going to let us know those impacts. Again, really early on in the design phase of this, that is something within that discussion with the town, and I know they're talking not only to us but to Mayor Joyce about those impacts and letting us know exactly what those are and what they need to address those impacts.
Okay, all right. My last point is, I wish somebody from Southfield Redevelopment was here, because their master plan says that for a smaller area, and there's other areas they haven't even touched yet, that I'm sure they're going to go back and re-identify to go build, and they're not just going to keep it as open land. And that 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, you know, just, I'm always one for if you're going to put something in, plan for down the road in the future to make sure that you don't have to come back to this again. All right? I appreciate tonight, I appreciate your efforts with this, but that's all my questions.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Again, make sure you visit the website, use the email, keep in contact through those with any other questions along the way. We'll have more types of these meetings. We promised the mayor and the town council that we'd come back as often as they felt needed, and so we would encourage feedback and anything you want to send our way.
Yeah, I just want to keep this brief because I know everybody wants to go, but the other concern I have, because I was involved heavily in the town government for a long period of time as a town meeting member, and the town was always concerned about third-party liability lawsuits being pressed against it for things that it's really not totally related to. If you're assuming that the pipe from Weymouth that will run all through the Braintree streets will be under your purview, that is correct. But what happens if something goes wrong with third-party liability suits? Are you going to indemnify the town? Are you going to put up a bond? Are you going to have money there for instance, what if the town wanted to work on its own pipes one day, and the contractor for the town accidentally struck your mega main and knocked out the hospital and all the towns south of Braintree? There's going to be a lot of lawsuits, and Braintree will be dragged into it as a third party, saying it didn't supervise or something. We don't really have a lot of money, and you don't have a lot of money because you don't have any federal grants. They're all cut off by the president, and the state doesn't have any money to give you, and yet the state's making you, because of the MBTA zoning and all that buildup, they're making your local taxpayers fund that pipe by themselves. And I don't think they have the money for it. And I don't think they have the money for people with lawsuits and things that might be suing the town. If that pipe ruptures because of a rupture associated to a Braintree person working on the Braintree pipes, by accident hitting something with their bucket, because the streets, people think the streets look nice because they look at the top of them. They don't realize is that underneath the streets, it's a river. It's crowded with pipes. There's no room, and something's going to get hit. And we have dig safe and stuff because things have gotten hit and they've caused tremendous problems, money, kill people even, cause death because the phones are knocked out, cause death because something with that important utilities like our water and your water are knocked out. We want to make sure that we can do things safely, and we don't want to be in a situation where Braintree blames Weymouth or Weymouth blames Braintree and everyone's pointing fingers at one another and a third-party contractor, and we're all responsible. We want to make sure we can be protected. Thank you.
Thank you. And just in general, I can assure you any concerns Braintree had will be addressed in our intermunicipal agreement. With that, with no more questions, I thank you for coming tonight, and keep in touch. Thanks.